Laurel by Mitski. It is 11 songs, 32 minutes long. Her first proper release since what was it? Be the Cowboy in
Yes.
2018, which was on our short list of album of the year nominations. There was a ton of praise for that record I thoroughly enjoy as well.
We named
Um,
it on our 50 of the 10s episode where we ranked the
Yep.
50 best albums of the 2010s decade. It was on that list. It was a
Yes.
phenomenal album.
It's
Mitski
phenomenal
is like one of the best
singer-songwriters of our generation by far, like hands down. It's someone that as she gets older, and now with this is her first record in her 30s, it just gets better with age. She continues to grow and grow as an artist, grows and grows with her songwriting, with the stylistic choices that she does, the production choices that she makes, the even like the musicality of it, like how it sounds and everything. And you get that in this record. You get a very introspective dance record that you can cry and you can dance to at the same time. And it's one of those rare records where you get that, and it's fantastic. Absolutely really love this record. It took me a couple listens to get into because it is a little bit slower at some points, but there's some songs in here that pick it up, more on that later, that really get you into this. So give yourself a couple listens to it, but it is very, very good.
Yeah,
really
I had the joy of listening to this album with a couple of people this weekend, and actually all these albums.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I got a really good test to be able to see how outside of my brain, to some people who are more musically inclined and some people who are less musically inclined, and just like go, oh, this sounds good, this doesn't. I can kind of get like a real sense of that. And I was just saying, hey, strap in, I'm doing the Audioface listen through, so like just deal with it. And there were tracks in here that people were just generally like surprised and stunned by in here. And I think that people who are musically inclined, non-musically inclined. So I like when albums have that broad appeal, and I can tell that when interacting with people. Haven't been able to do that all that much because of COVID over the past 2 years. So that's also a nice feeling as well. But I want to go into it. Working for the Knife is the second song. Valentine, Texas starts off really nicely to get into the mood of the album.
It starts off slow. Valentine, Texas starts off slow for me about the first 90 seconds, but the last minute it explodes into this beautiful ballad, and and you get a sense of, oh, well, this is what it's going to be like. And her voice on that track is incredible, and you get a sense of, if this is what we're going to get with this record, this is going to be great. And it's a good opening track. Yeah. And then you get Working for the Knife, which fantastic track.
We reviewed it as a single last year. We liked what it was kind of alluding to. We commented that was a little bit slow and almost moody kind of, but had this way of developing, like the first song did, throughout the rest of the track into something that really just encompasses you sound-wise and emotion-wise. You really feel what Mitski is talking about, what she's singing about in the track, and it just really resonates. It's almost like one of those goosebumpy things to do in a second track of an album. Really it's pretty insane.
In the context now of the record, it makes sense for Working for the Knife of how it is. I would still make the comparison to this. Her voice in this track reminds me a lot of Lana Del Rey, with the way like it sounds, but a lot better, obviously. And then the big thing is, and something that I have commented like on Lana's music before, like when you have a voice like this, which is naturally melancholy, naturally really deep for a woman to sound, you have to make the production around it to sound very good. And if you do that, you can have an album like this, which really promotes it. If you don't, it can feel bland and flat, which to me happens a lot on these Lana records. This is to me what you do with a voice that is this good and this unique. This is the way you produce a record around it, and you use it as a tool, along with everything else that you have it on. And Working for the Knife is a perfect track for that as well. Moving on, you have Stay Soft, which is a really good like indie pop song. I really like this track. It reminds me of that like solid indie style that I love from like the late 2000s, early 2010s, like your MGMTs of the world and so on, where you just get that big synth energy, but it builds and then it stops. It builds and it stops. And I like that because it's never just like at one level. It continuously grows and moves along in waves with it. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I really appreciate that soft synthiness. It's just an affect. It's another instrument that's there. It's not really taking over anything, which is characteristic of 2000s indie, where it was just
Yep,
another instrument,
exactly.
like a keyboard, for
Exactly.
example. But I will say weirder than a lot of albums. A lot of albums they start really strong and then you get near the end, it kind of tops out. I'd say
This is the
the
opposite.
kind of it's slow, not weaker, but I'd say maybe like the slower part of the album is through Stay Soft, Everyone kind of through Heat Lightning. But then 6, 7, 8, 9, like
Whew.
the only heartbreaker, it's just a run absolutely of really intensely powerful, raw, emotional tracks that also just like slap and go like really good and
They
they're
are
like fairly upbeat.
fantastic. Those two tracks for me, The Only Heartbreaker and Love Me More, are two of my favorite that I've done in a long time, of tracks back to back that just flow well together, that sound great. They're upbeat. They're very deep in the way that, like, lyrically, they're very, very deep, but you can still dance to it in that way. And I love tracks like that, that if you really listen to it and understand, you're like, wow, it's deep. There's a lot of emotion in this. But then if you just passively listen to it, not really listen to the lyrics, you're just kind of dancing and grooving to the beat because it's a fantastic beat. And you get that a lot, like in Love Me More. I have listened to this track by like 48 times in 72 hours. This record has been over. This is the stuff I dig up. This indie pop that I'm a sucker for, but it's fantastic. And this is to me the best Mitski's voice has ever sounded on a track.
Yeah, it
So
was really phenomenal. It gave me sort of like a like similarly to what Miles Kane was doing in that you're trying to make an album that applies optimism in a way that is almost like subversive, sort of, where
yeah,
like
yeah.
it feels like it's doing that. And I'm definitely not saying that like Mitski is copying any artist, especially after the Mac DeMarco fiasco from the last album
Oh
rollout.
god, that's right.
So don't
Comes the
conf-
cowboy.
do not confuse my words there. But I'm saying that I like that they're both similar, and it's a thing that we reviewed recently, and so we're making that comparison as well. And I think that that may be something Sean likes about it as well. That's like you could be confused for an optimistic song, and that like
And it's
those
not.
yeah, and those tones also call back to earlier motifs in 60s and 70s, like doo-wop and like popular music at that time that is kind of
Yes.
like optimistic and bubbly. But then, of course, it's Mitski, and you get into the nature of these songs, and it actually has something deeper there.
And that's what I love. I love hidden meanings. I love tracks that expand more, like that just keep expanding, expanding. And when you really get to the nitty gritty of it, they have a lot of meaning. Because the thing that lacks with me, and what happens to a ton of pop music, is it's just, generic oversampled songs that don't really have too much meaning to them. But this whole album, there is nothing that is out of place. There's no song that doesn't have a specific meaning, a specific area where it needs to be. So that way, not one subject or not one thing is overdone. Because you can get that with records about love, of about relationships, of about personal issues, about other things. You can just have that hammer and hammer and over and over and over again, which we get on this podcast quite a bit. But you have these records where it encapsulates so many different things that it makes each song sound good. It makes each song have a meaning. It makes the entire project, the entire record, really have a great start to begin, start to finish. And there's no real misses on that. And the great thing about this is, since it's shorter, just like Be the Cowboy is, it's only 32 minutes. I think Be the Cowboy is about that part, about mid-30s range, and it's perfect.
Yeah, didn't feel too long or too short. Wonderful project. And as you get through the last tracks, like Should Have Been Me continues that sort of poppy motif, subversive thing that we were talking about earlier. I guess does that wonderful thing where you have that second to last song be really
It's
kind of soft and
slow, it's
slow and
gorgeous. And then That's
set
Our
the stage
Lamp
for the last
wraps it
one.
up.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love that. My only complaint is, I wish That's Our Lamp was longer. That's
Yeah.
it. When it finished, I was like, damn, I wanted more. But that's something you want in a record. You don't want to overstay your welcome. You don't want to be YB of just make an album that is 8 hours long and then make another one 3 months later, make another one 6 months later. And you'd be like, I don't want to do this. You want this where it's like, damn, this was 4 years of work. And saying that 2018 was 4 years ago. You had Dan had an epiphany right there. 4 years of work, and you made such a good record. We want more. but that's a good problem to have. And this is the first, this Don FM and more later on this podcast are albums that already I'm like, shit, this could be record of the year to categories. It's that good.
Yeah, this
Mitski
is
is really, really becoming one of the greatest singer-songwriters of our generation. 100%.
truly solidifying as it.
Yes.
Continuing as we've done recently on Audioface and just absolutely tainting the wonderful music reviews we've been doing with just absolutely decrepit arbitrary scales because we choose to review.
We do arbitrary scales because rating scales are stupid, and I hate them because you give one album a 7, you give another album a 7, but those 7s don't necessarily weigh more than the other 7s. One might be Ethereum, one might be Bitcoin Cash. You never know what that 7 might hold for you on the blockchain. So going on to that, because we always make everything arbitrary, because our review is our review. As we said it, take it for what that is. Arbitrary scale this week is Joe Rogan apologies, because we got a plethora of those.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of those to go over. Years and years of that.
It's been years.
Years.
I'm gonna do when Joe Rogan apologizes for not doing a podcast for a long period of time because, and that long period of time is like a week, because he is out hunting or doing something else performatively manly like he usually does.
That's a good one.
This is like, this is a soft, like, hey, listen, guys, I was over at the Thumb convention down in Austin, and I was unfortunately unable to do the podcast, but it's totally fine. 3 of my other thumb-looking comedian friends will be back to bore you for another 3 hours anytime now, so just don't worry about it. You! Trump won 2016 in Texas.
This
2020,
is 2020. This is Joe Rogan going on saying how this isn't exactly what he said, but he's apologizing for it anyways, his half-ass apology, and then going over, I have these doctors on, I have these people on, I just want to have conversations, man. That's it. I just want to have conversations. But if I offended you, I'm sorry, but conversations matter. That bullshit.
I'm just asking questions. I'm just asking questions.
That's it. I'm just asking questions.